world according to Jesse.
Arsalan Iftikhar is an international human rights lawyer and the founder of MuslimGuy.com. He's also the author of Fear of a Muslim Planet, and he joins me today to discuss global Islamophobia. There are nearly 2 billion Muslims on earth today. How do you define Islamophobia and what drives it?
Well, Jesse the Body Ventura, first of all, it's an honor to be on your show. And Islamophobia, like any form of global global racism today, is really an irrational fear or hatred of anything related to Islam or Muslims, right? Similar to anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism, anything that sort of conflates one minority demographic group into a monolithic entity that, in this case, against Muslims would be Islamophobia.
Now, for those who don't know about the Muslim religion, what are its core messages?
The core messages are actually the same as Christianity and Judaism at its most central tenets. You know, it's one of the three monotheistic Abrahamic religions that worship the same God of Abraham. And, you know, one of the most common stereotypes, Jesse, that people have had, especially in the last 20 years, is that Islam and Muslims must worship some different God, right? Because we call him Allah, which is the Arabic word for God. But if you actually go to any Middle Eastern country today and open a copy of the Bible in Arabic, the word God will be transcribed as Allah, right? It's similar to Spanish people referring to God as Dios, or German folks calling God Gott. And so again, we have to understand the commonalities that most, you know, these monotheistic religions have, and that we have a lot more in common than we have differences.
Now, again, let's piggyback on that. What are some stereotypes or common misconceptions about the Muslim religion? Expand on it.
Yeah, well, you know, Jesse, the most common one is, you know, the misnomer that all Muslims are Arabs and that all Arabs are Muslims. Again, there are 2 billion Muslims on the face of the earth, but actually less than 20% of Muslims on earth are Arabs. The vast majority of Muslims, over 1 billion of them actually live in Indonesia. You know, similarly, the fact that all Arabs are Muslims. I'm not an Arab, right? American Muslims, there are African American Muslims and South Asian American Muslims. And actually, if you look at in Dearborn, Michigan, which is right next door to your home state of Minnesota, right above my hometown of Chicago, actually half of the Arabs that live in Michigan today are actually Christians. Right. So again, getting beyond the conflations of, you know, trying to reduce things to monolithic entities is really going to be the key in order to tolerance moving forward.
Now, how did the events of September 11th, 2001 affect Muslims in the U.S.? Did Western attitudes towards Muslims change after that day?
Absolutely, Jesse. You know, for the vast majority of Americans before September 11th, they knew really little to nothing about Islam or Muslims. And sadly, on that day, and then, of course, the 20 years thereafter, you know, they've seen all these meta narratives on social media, whether it's cable news networks, you know, about conflating anything related to Islam or Muslims with extremism or terrorism, right? That terrorism only occurs when olive-skinned brown men with ethnic sounding names like mine, you know, commit crimes, and not when, you know, white supremacists and other different actors do the same. And so again, sadly, on that day, you know, the American public, you know, was exposed more to Islam and Muslims, and obviously, you know, that's what we've been dealing with in the last 20 years.
Now, do you feel your religion was weaponized that day, not just by terrorists, but by politicians and political pundits?
Absolutely, Jesse. But, you know, as your character Blaine said in Predator, I ain't got time to bleed, right? And so, you know, we've been spending the last 20 years not only having to reclaim our faith from the, you know, the talons of the extremists in our own midst, but also from right-wing politicians who have used it to scapegoat, you know, 1/4 of the world's population and try to capitalize on the politics of fear.
Now, your book covers examples of global Islamophobia, including China's Muslim deprogramming camps, which the U.S. condemns. But what has Washington done to address Islamophobia at home?
Not much at all, Jesse the Body Ventura. And obviously we saw this, in the last 4 years of Donald Trump. I mean, look at the Republican Party today. People often forget, when Donald Trump issues the Muslim travel ban or says things like, I think Islam hates us, to CNN's Anderson Cooper, that he's actually just pandering to the Republican political base today. We often forget that there were 16 other Republican primary candidates who really tried to out-Islamophobe each other. For example, you had Dr. Ben Carson, who once said that he doesn't think that Muslims or Hindus should be allowed to serve as federal judges here in the United States. You have former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who said that Islam promotes the most murderous mayhem on earth, and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who has said that Sharia law, Islamic law, is a, quote, mortal threat to the United States of America. Now, of course, he clearly has not read the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, which says that only the Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. So not only should they not be allowed to run for president, they should retroactively fail ninth grade civics class.
And it's kind of interesting, those are all Republicans, aren't they?
They are, and sadly, xenophobia and fear of the other is something that the Republican Party, has used. Whether in the 90s it was the gay marriage debate. Now, part of the platform has become: are you pro-Muslim or anti-Muslim? Like, how anti-Muslim are you willing to go? We have to remember that over 13 state legislatures here in the United States, Jesse, have passed some sort of anti-Sharia laws on their books, even though, again, the Supremacy Clause, again, as a lawyer, trumps all of that. But again, as you know, facts don't matter. It's all about heuristics. It's all about helping to shift meta-narratives. And a lot of these anti-Sharia legislations were actually in the calendar year to run-ups to midterm elections.
Now, you've had years of experience as a human rights lawyer helping Muslims navigate the law to overcome Islamophobia. Can you give me some quick examples?
Yeah, Jesse, since 9/11 here in the United States and in the Western world, in Europe as well, the rights of Muslims, Arabs, and South Asians have really disparately come, into focus. I have helped Somali refugees, who've been summarily fired from, tech companies or meatpacking plants just because they wanted to take a 15-minute break to pray, which is, again, protected under federal law. Muslim women who wear the headscarf, the hijab, who are, visibly Muslim, being attacked on the streets, having to deal with hate crimes all over the Western world. And, again, Jesse, for millions of brown Americans, people like me who were born and raised in America, even our own sense of American identity has been called into question. I mean, I was once doing a live, nationally televised debate on a news network that will remain nameless. All right, it was Fox News. And as soon as we cut to commercial break, the news anchor, she looks at me and she goes, "That was a great interview that you did. Where are you from?" And I said, "Chicago." And she goes, "No, where are you really from?" And I said, "Chicago." And I walked out of her studio. She couldn't fathom that a brown Muslim man would be able to walk into her studio, from the hometown of Randy Macho Man Savage, your former tag team partner, Downers Grove North High School in Downers Grove, Illinois, and be American. Right. So again, we have to understand that brown Americans, millions of us who were born and raised here, in the last 20 years, even though we've known no other home other than the U.S., even our own sense of American identity has been called into question. And that's why we all need to stand up as intersectional allies for one another and help uplift each other for the common good.
Now, how can people overcome their fear of others and create a more peaceful, tolerant world? That's my last question.
Jesse the Body Ventura, that is the million-dollar question. And the honest answer is to widen our apertures and get to know people who are different from us, right? Social media age, our Facebook, Twitter feeds, these are echo chambers. We're really just hearing our own friends and things like that. And what I often tell people is that, listen, we all have crazy racist relatives and friends in our social networks. And when you speak out as an ally against Islamophobia or anti-Semitism or homophobia or whatever kind of otherization it is with your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, they're much more likely to listen to you than they are to see, the Muslim talking head on TV that they would expect to speak out on Islamophobia. And so again, speaking out as allies when we're not in part of the impacted communities will really help to widen our own apertures and really help to build some tolerance within our spheres of influence.
Arsalan, unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you very much. Hopefully, you've opened some eyes to some people out there in the United States and throughout the world that we can all get along.
Thank you for having me on your show, Jesse the Body Ventura.